go. We're live and on Facebook.
Mate, hey, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving and happy
And
birthday, Mr. Sweetman.
happy birthday. Yeah, it's a non-exciting number, so we won't even talk about it, but
But
it's
I mean, my calendar said, because I get the Facebook update, obviously, of all my friends' birthdays, and it said you're turning 35 today. So
35 all
I
over
mean,
again, baby.
amazing.
Yeah, I'll take it. Absolutely, I'll take it. So welcome everybody. Great to have you here today, day before Thanksgiving here in the USA. If you're tuning in from Australia or the UK or Canada or any of our other non-USA, welcome. And this is kind of going to be a fun podcast. I got all kinds of activity going on outside my house. So if you hear like crazy noises, I've got landscape professionals doing some last minute things because we've got 30 people coming tomorrow for Thanksgiving.
You know what? As people can probably tell, I'm not in the normal office, and if I zoomed in really close, that's family pictures behind me. So,
Gotta love it.
I'm at the in-laws' house getting ready for Thanksgiving, and I'm not sure how many people will be here. I'm imagining 20 or so.
So this
It's a
is
big
how
party.
adaptable we are. Like, doesn't matter what's going on around about us. We're here, Tidely TV, rain, hail, or shine. We're
It's
making it
going
happen.
down. It's going
Yeah,
down. That's right. That's
100%.
right. You might see
So
kids coming in the background. I don't know. I apologize
bring
in
it on.
advance for any
Bring it on.
distractions.
It's going to be good. So so happy Thanksgiving to all our US guys. And we're going to talk a little bit today about being thankful and
Yeah.
how that kind of, works around generosity. We got some really good practical things that Frank has written up a phenomenal list of things that you can do on a practical level to be thankful to your congregation, to the people who really make your church or your ministry function, and that's all those generous people, right, that are giving. I just want to touch on a little thing about what you celebrate, what you prioritize in church. Is ultimately what you elevate in church. So,
Hmm.
if you're celebrating baptism, I remember in our church, and my son, who's, I attend his church here in LA, they started doing these kind of unannounced baptisms. Like they wouldn't even prepare. They just say, hey, if you want to be water baptized today. And amazingly, like tons and tons of people would like kind of opt in, right?
Right.
And when you kind of celebrate things like baptism, you're really kind of prioritizing and elevating evangelism and just the excitement around, coming to Christ and getting your life right and all that good stuff.
Right.
Communion, when you celebrate communion, you're just throwing that focus on the Lord's table and making that a big deal in service. When I grew up, a lot of people might not know, but I grew up in the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic school. And, for all that is, it did give me an incredible kind of sense of awe and searching and wonder, and really was my early kind of years of trying to discover God. And then I got born again in a kind of evangelical church in Sydney in the early 80s. But we used to do communion every week. And I
Yeah,
loved it.
we do it every week, actually, in my home church. So it's just part of
So,
service.
and depending on, we have every denomination under the sun on the Tidely platform and in the
That's right.
family. So
Yep.
every church does it a little bit different, and that's okay. But when you celebrate communion, obviously that's that really big focus around
Yeah.
what Jesus did at the cross and all that good stuff. When you celebrate, and we know this to be true, and we believe this, and we see the facts. When you celebrate giving, it unleashes generosity. And
Yeah.
when you move into that whole realm of kind of giving, oh my gosh, I got phones going on. So when you move into that
What,
zone
we
of
just need a
being,
quick pause. Was that an actual landline? Like you have a
it
plugged-in
was.
phone
I,
in your home?
I
Wait,
got a phone.
what?
My wife wanted it. She's like, I need a landline. I'm like, okay. I don't know how to
Oh,
turn the thing off though. So anyway, I might just throw it out the window. But when you celebrate giving, you're prioritizing and really bringing kind of generosity into the focus.
yeah.
And,
We
and
just on
go,
that note, I mean, my church does, and a lot of churches do this. We do like a yearly missions focused like fundraising thing, right? So
yeah,
we don't really talk about it all year long, but there's a period of time for 2, 3 months where it's the focus, and the church is
yep,
talking about it a lot. There's a lot of buzz going on. It's talked about from stage. And
Yep.
then, we have a goal and we want to raise a certain amount of money to go do overseas missions work, and support
Hmm.
our church family and a
You
bunch of
guys are
other.
huge in missions. You guys are
Yeah.
animals when it comes to missions.
But then, to your point about celebrating, like when it's done, there's always a big celebration, right? So now it's built into the church culture because it's been around from the beginning, and people get really excited about
Yep.
the work that we're doing, and everybody's participating, and so it's just a thing.
Yep.
And you even see it maybe outside of church, like in my own family, right? When you, with the
Yep.
kids, when you celebrate certain things, like we have at the house, we have it's called the star plate, right? And so it's a plate, so like breakfast, lunch, dinner, right? There's a plate, and like you get the
Yep.
star plate for just doing something that mommy and daddy recognize, right? Something good, something that we
Yep.
want to celebrate. And so we do the happy dance, we run around the house, and I carry them on my shoulders, and they get to have the star plate for dinner, right? And so they, what you celebrate, like people remember and they get
Yep.
into.
Absolutely. So to that kind of practical sense now, we all year it seems like, in church life, we're presenting vision, we're throwing things out there to our congregations, we're teaching biblically around giving and generosity.
Hmm.
And so there's a really big kind of thing that I think, as you know, in this kind of sense of growth and expansion, and we want to keep kind of building the kingdom on many levels. And those of us on the front lines of that understand that that takes money, it takes finances to be able to do that effectively. The culture of thankfulness needs to be built into the foundation of the church.
Right.
And it comes from experience. It comes from the top. And certainly, if you're a leader in the church, certainly if you're the lead pastor, you're on stage, you're taking offerings, you're anything to do around money publicly, building in the culture into the fabric of who you are as a church around thankfulness is really, really, really important, because it's easy to take people for granted and just think, you know what, they're just kind of following their conviction or they're being obedient to the Bible. But you know what? It's at the end of the day, man, it is a big deal for people to sacrifice and give financially to churches. And so
Right.
having that, kind of beautiful sense of, oh my goodness, so we're just so in awe of the generosity of the church that we can't not keep saying thank you to everybody who's
Yeah.
participating.
It's like the Bible teaches, we want to be like Christians should be thankful in all circumstances, right? Like having that
Thanks.
heart, that spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it also, to hear from your church leaders from stage or in various formats, gratitude coming from them, like
Yep.
that connects, right? Like, so you don't do it to get that thanks, right? You don't do it for that reason as
Right.
somebody following Jesus, but it certainly feels good. It feels good to be part of the family and kind of hear those kind of things from the leadership.
Yep. So you've got a practical list here of how we
Yeah,
should and when. I'll touch on the
wrote it
first
down and
one.
everything.
Oh my gosh, old school notes. Um, I'm reading from the Google Doc, looking very professional here, like it's coming out of my mind. But obviously, the first one is around the giving moment,
Hmm.
and most churches have a giving moment. If you don't, we encourage that you should. And even if hey, put your offering in the box at the back. There is, I think that you can never say thank you enough in service, and so around the giving moment, from personal past history, I always used at the end of every offering, I would say thank you.
Yeah.
And it would be, hey, church, appreciate you giving today. Just want to tell you how much we appreciate and thank you as a staff, as the leadership team. Your generosity counts, and however you're going to frame it. But just a 30-second thank you in the offering moment, I think, is the kind of the first baseline, if you like, of having that thankful spirit in church.
And I guess when it's sort of out of the overflow, right? When you
Right.
up there taking the offering are sincerely grateful and expressing that, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be big and fancy at all, right?
Yep.
It's just people
Nope.
pick up on your sincerity, right?
Yep.
And your authentic thank you, and that goes a long way. And it can
Yep.
take 5 seconds as part of the
Yep.
offering moment.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Mate, what are some practical things, that that you think that churches and leadership teams could kind of practice to really get this thing cemented in the life of the church?
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about like the offering moment. So I think that kind of goes in line with just from stage. And maybe there's other times from stage that you say thank you too, right? Like I mentioned one for our church when we do the big missions, fundraising effort, right, over a period of months. There's always a massive thank you and a celebration that happens from stage
Yep.
where we show how much was raised versus what the goal was, and we talk about where that money's going to go and which churches it's going to help. And sometimes we even have via Skype, the church leaders from somewhere in Mexico or some other country like come in from Skype and thank the
Right.
church, right? It's like
That's
the
awesome.
pastor and his wife come up and they're saying thank you to the church, and they're talking about how the money's being used. So I think there's just a lot of ways from stage. You've probably done some in your past as well, Dean, where it's like from stage,
Yep.
you're saying a big thank you.
100%. And then, sometimes we would video in from things that we're involved in around the place. But yeah, and some people, you never really want to single people out, because a lot of people that give, certainly generous people, they don't want to be known,
Right.
and they want to keep it anonymous. But I would kind of talk around, while never mentioning names. I would say, hey, look, there's people in this church that are above and beyond, just going the extra mile. And,
Right.
the other thing too is that I used to love writing personal notes.
Yes.
And I think in the age of digital, and it's easy to, it's like, I don't know, in the last 6 months or so, I feel like I'm responding to everything with a thumbs up emoji. And you know what I
Thumbs
mean?
up, the heart, like
Yeah.
the
I
fire
mean,
like
no, I've totally jumped into the emoji world. Like, and so now it's convenient. Like, I even just do like, people are responding to my birthday on Facebook, and I'm not even responding to some of them because I'm just doing the like
like
emoji in
just
the
the like.
comment.
Yeah.
Right.
Or not even the emoji, just the like. I just hit like, and like that's
And
enough, right?
yeah, so I'm like, wow, is this where it's got to? And it is, right?
Yeah, right.
Now, the upside that is that you can communicate to like 20 million times more people, right? There's
Right.
no question. But that to me only makes the actual writing of thank yous even more powerful now,
Right.
because people just don't get them. So super practical, pastor, church leader. If people are making contributions, and look, it's not about the amount. So if someone gives a big contribution, absolutely, you should write them a note. But if you've got, a single mom in your church who's faithfully, making those contributions, and I always loved my staff coming to me and saying, hey, here's 5 people that you should write a note to this week, or,
Yeah.
Here's some people in this last month that have really gone big. And you may or may not be into knowing what your people give. That's a personal thing within church leadership styles. But here's the deal. You should have someone telling you, 5, 10, 20 people in this last month or so that need a note from you. And then just, it doesn't have to be flashy stationery. It can be, but just on the church's letterhead, just go and write.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a volume.
It could be a card with the Facebook emoji thumbs
Yeah,
up
right.
on the front of it and a
Yep.
personal note
Yeah.
on the back of it.
There you go. 2 birds with one stone. But yeah, I just think in the age of digital and fast communication, which is highly practical, and I practice it, I think personal notes and personal thank yous, the weight of those things is only going to go up.
Again, there's always some sort of relation outside of church. My wife appreciates written cards, not just the card from Hallmark that has the already pre-written note in it, but
standard. Yeah.
the card with me writing a letter, right?
Right.
Basically,
Of course.
like to her, like that's her love language. Like
Yeah.
saying thank you in a personal note.
Yeah.
At different moments, whether it's a special occasion or it's just a surprise, like I wanted to write something, right? So it means a lot to people, right? So getting that from your pastor, your senior pastor, or someone you're connected to in the church on staff, would go a long way. And I think that even extends into other personal forms of thank you, right? It could be taking them to coffee, it could be going to dinner, it could be coming over the house and hanging out with the family for an hour, right? Like all of these things could be ways that you more, not digitally, but old school analog in person say thank you, right?
Right. Exactly.
And it could be for lots of, it could be because you you're a big giver. It could be because you're a first time giver, right? I think personal notes to first time givers is a
Definitely.
pretty powerful.
So that is a thing. So, shameless plug is that the first time people give, you can see that. And then, certainly with our management system, that we're rolling out too, getting those first time, never given before givers, having someone in your team get those names and addresses to you and writing those guys. And it's not kind of almost about the money that they gave. It's the fact that when you give something, that means your heart is drawn to it. And so for a new member or a new visitor, come 3, 6, 7, 8 weeks, couple months, and all of a sudden they give.
Yeah.
And that's a signal. And that signal is, hey, you know what? My heart is starting to connect to this church. And I'm starting to really enjoy the message. I really am falling and connected with the people. So I'm going to give, right? Mm-hmm. And so that moment to be highlighted is absolutely gold. So as a church leader, it's like, hey, thanks for giving. It's not really like, hey, thanks for your contribution, but it's, hey, acknowledging them that they've really started to connect with the life and the vision of the church, and writing that thank you for doing that, I think is absolutely critical.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something I've heard more and more churches asking about, like either asking about it or wanting to know more about it, like that kind of thing. So that one, like first time giver thank you, seems to be something that maybe it's gone on for, decades. But it seems like something more churches are trying to do. So, that's a big one. So we hit from stage a bunch, first time givers, personal notes, and other personal forms of thank you. I think from a digital perspective, right, like maybe a step removed from personal, but digital provides a means for a church to do it like at scale to everyone. And there's a few moments, right? There's somebody just gave a gift digitally on your website or via mobile app, and they get the thank you email. Right. So like
it's automatic on the platform.
Yep. So I think that email is a moment. The web page that people give from, even on your website, like right there, even before they give the gift, having something that is kind of a thank you, right? For that somebody could read, like why we give, what we give to, and an appreciation, right? Showing thankfulness kind of right there.
Definitely.
So I think those two spots, like web page, landing page, thank you receipt, or thank you email, are 3 very important spots to say thank you, like explicitly.
Yeah, 100%. And so we can dig into that a little bit. On the web page, you could have some testimonial from, so it's like, thanks from the team, thanks from Pastor so-and-so, but also that's a great spot for having a 2 or 3 paragraph testimonial of Thanksgiving from a church member.
Right.
And often the power of the thank you, when it comes from the top, it carries a certain weight. But when it comes from regular Joe church member who is super thankful for what God's doing in their life, and that little testimony can be really powerful.
Right.
I think in that the automatic one that we send after a contribution, there's a lot of like great real estate in that kind of email that you can creatively take advantage of.
Like churches don't often do this, but in that email, you could usually churches will like write something. Maybe they kind of tailor it a little bit.
Hopefully they're not using our stock standard thing that we put in, right?
Right. But what if you changed it every week?
I know. I love.
Or every 30 days, you changed what's in that email and you highlighted one of those stories that you were talking about, or you put a link to a video from the senior pastor, right? Like, so you're just creatively every week or every month even changing that message and doing something creative with it to say thank you, right? Now you're doing it to every single donor, or every single giver, digitally. They're getting something that almost feels a little bit more personal because you've tailored it and you've changed it every so often.
So we know what happens when you update content, right? People look at it more.
Right.
Stagnant web pages, stagnant content is like terrible.
Right.
And so the automatic thank you email it's almost can be a newsletter that updates, like you said, every month, and you can shoot a little, you can be in the staff meeting with whether your staff is 2 or 22 and
Right.
shoot a quick little video now with your phone. The
Yeah.
quality's fine. It's, hey, we want to say and highlight and just use that, because every time someone gives using Tithely, they're going to get that thank you email. And if it's the same, people are barely going to look at it. But if you start kind of changing that up and doing some really fun, putting gifts in there, putting videos in there, highlighting different staff members of the church, getting people to say, if like something great in the kids ministry happened, or you purchased a bunch of, kind of crafts and crayons or whatever it
Right.
is, right?
Yeah.
It's like having the children's church leader jump into that video and say, hey, just want to say thank you. Your contributions are making this happen. And then have the kids all jumping and shouting.
Celebrating. Yeah. Showing
Right.
off. Or
Right.
if you
So,
use the money, like a lot of churches during the holiday season are gifting families, maybe
yep.
getting presents for the kids, or
Right.
giving them a Christmas because they can't otherwise afford it, or whatever it is, right? So
Yep.
why not put that in your automatic email confirmation, like a video of that, or telling those
100%.
stories.
Yeah. And so getting creative with the digital form of communication rather than it just being bland is probably the kind of the rule of the day. Just don't go standard, change it up, make it fun, and use it as kind of an opportunity to really kind of penetrate through all the noise and let people know how grateful you are.
Yeah. And you touched on it. I mean, I think in all of these places, whether it's on stage, in an email confirmation, on your website, in social media, and we can hit social media in a second more, all of those spots telling stories of impact should just be like standard. You should always be. And I remember, Dean, us chatting one time, and I'm like, how do we get those stories? And you're like, oh, I used to always use my small group leaders to help surface stories of impact, right?
That's
so
That's it.
I mean, I think that's a great idea, but finding ways to get these stories of impact and surfacing them in all of your channels is a must do.
Yeah. I think and like when you have the thankfulness kind of seam running through the life of the church, and certainly from the leadership, so easy to take anything for granted. We take our families for granted, we take our health for granted. It's not until you get sick is you get really kind of thankful about being healthy when you are healthy. But so that you got to get rid of that kind of taking it for granted thing. It's easy to take for granted, generous people, because this is not like given to any old charity. The church is not a charity. The church is a mission. We know we've been kind of sent by God to change the earth, right? Through preaching the gospel, bringing the love of Jesus to the earth. And so it's not this kind of sense of, oh, I'm going to, I live in LA and there are so many like charitable, great things, and my wife and I, we contribute to some of them. My brother-in-law is involved in a phenomenal charity that helps, young homeless people get back up on their feet. I want to give to that all day, every day. But that's out of a sense of compassion, right? I'm compassionate, so I want to give. Giving in church is different. There's obedience involved. There's a call involved. There's the sense of the mission of what we're all about. There's the higher call of bringing the love of Jesus to the world, knowing that that's the only answer. The only answer to the world is Jesus, right? So and so when people get that and they come in, whether they're new believers or they've been in church their whole life, that sense of mission on what they're supposed to do is there. Okay. That shouldn't mean we just take that for granted. And I think what we're talking about today is building in the whole culture of thankfulness. Okay, we talk about generosity a ton, but I think as much as we want the spirit of generosity in our church, we want that whole beautiful spirit of thankfulness just woven in, to your point, to every single thing that we do.
Yeah. Should be, I mean, look, we know we want to be thankful as individuals. If the church is thankful as a whole, right, the people in the church are going to probably be more thankful, more grateful. That's going to flow into the whole family, right? And that's, God calls us to be those kind of people, right? So the church should be that way at large.
Absolutely. So why don't we talk about the social media stuff a little bit, because that's a whole ball of wax. I know you've got some best practices here on how we should be doing that.
Man, I think all this stuff is almost the same. It's just new channels, right? So on social media, you've got churches are really big on Facebook and Instagram, probably a little bit on Twitter. but just using those channels to say thank you. And like, I think you're going to connect with different people. Not everyone's on Facebook or Instagram.
Right.
Um, Not everybody is in service every weekend. Not everybody's on email. Like, you know, you have all these spots, but you want to hit all of them. You want to hit
Yep.
every single location, in service, personal notes, like going out to dinner, social media, website, email confirmation.
Right. Right.
And in a way, you want to think about, like, if I'm changing my email every week, let's say my email confirmation every week, what I should be sharing that same story on
Yep.
Facebook and on Instagram. It's just that the formats are a little different, right?
So you're
So
creating content, but distributing through different formats.
yeah, yeah, and knowing the format of, you know, an Instagram versus a Twitter versus a Facebook
Mm-hmm.
versus my email, right? They're all going
Right.
to be a little different in terms of how you structure it, maybe how
Yep.
you write for it, maybe how many graphics or videos are part of it, right? So,
Yep.
but using all those channels, and you know, Instagram is perfect for this kind of short video, quick thank you from, you know, the children's ministry or the kids or whatever. Like, you get those
Yep.
videos with permission and you put them up on an Instagram story, and then you post them on your Facebook page. And you just weave that in. And you could probably get creative with social media, where maybe every once a week you're highlighting, uh, you know, I don't know, it could be a staff member, it could be a member, it could be a volunteer, right? You're highlighting people in the church, because the
Yep.
church is about people, and you're sort of saying thank you for what they're doing. So I love this idea of, like, finding specific things within the church that you can thank people for, and then just highlighting it in all your channels.
Love it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think the whole social media thing, and I think most of our churches on the platform are pretty savvy, and we talk a lot about it, and we've had like guests like Justin Dean, right, who's total professional on all this stuff.
what is that?
And
2 episodes ago, I think, Justin Dean,
yeah,
social media
yeah,
for churches. Yeah.
and he's a guru, right? And so there's a ton of best practices around social media, but I think that what you hit on, if you're creating, I think one of the things that we're discovering today is we're talking about creating thankful content, right? So
Yes.
that you can put in
Communications.
yeah. And so obviously taking that content, that thankful content, and almost the word content kind of doesn't sound right because it sounds like you're just producing stuff. Hopefully it's coming out of the rightful heart and the motivation is correct.
Well,
So
churches are the biggest content creators on the planet. Like, every
absolutely,
Sunday,
we preach it.
somebody's creating an hour long or a 30-minute long
Right.
sermon, right?
Right.
And that thing can be chunked up and delivered in a bunch of different ways. That's not just from the stage,
Yep.
right? So,
100%. Yeah, exactly.
um,
So, that getting that through those different channels, I think is it's going to affect your church.
yeah,
There's no doubt
it's,
in my mind.
and I know Justin, when we had the last podcast with Justin Dean on it, right? Like, this position of, like, communications
Hmm.
director, or
Yep.
somebody that thinks about church communications
Hmm.
as a whole, right,
Yep.
is a pretty big deal, because that's the person that would be thinking about, how do I take the Sunday content and use it throughout the week? How do I create content around, you know, Thanksgiving and
Right.
even Christmas and all the seasons that we're in? Like, they'd be the one thinking about that all the time, because oftentimes the senior
Right.
pastor doesn't have time to think about all that, right? It's not their
Yep.
specialty.
Yep. Yep.
So
100%.
let's hit on. I got two last ones we want to hit on before we wrap. We're at 28 minutes or so.
Let's do it.
Um, I think the end of year in the U.S. specifically,
Yep.
but I'm sure in other countries there's some form of maybe yearly kind of update.
Hmm.
In the U.S., it's the tax receipt, right? So beginning of the year, every church in the U.S. is sending out a tax receipt. I think that moment is an amazing moment for every single church to say thank you.
100%.
So, have you
100%.
seen any good examples of that in your time?
Yeah, so the typically what Frank's talking about is that end of year giving statement that usually you print out, right, and put in
Yep,
envelopes, and people
printed.
come and get them, right? There they are. Some people, and now on the platform, anyone who's been around more than a year will know that you can send those babies to PDF and go straight to email and shoot them out. So
Yep.
obviously they're customizable. I think you can, some of the things that we've been talking about today, you can get extremely creative on how you do. And correct me if I'm wrong, Frank, but I think we're doing a show on end of year tax statements. We're
And
going to
well,
focus
end
on
of year giving. I think we're going to
end of
cover
year
just end
giving.
of year giving at large, and this will be a part of that show for sure.
Right.
So
So,
maybe we don't have to cover it all, but the
yeah,
thankful portion of
but
it.
I think get creative. Don't do a boilerplate, cut and paste. Hey, thanks for giving. We appreciate your sacrifice. Like blah blah blah. It's like
Yeah,
anyone can do that.
yeah.
Put a little bit of flair into it.
Or
Get,
maybe
get
even a step back. Don't just send the financial, like, here's your record of giving. Like,
yeah,
Frank
right.
Barry address, you gave this much
Yeah,
money and here's
gave
all your
X.
transactions, right? Like, that's the worst thing you could do
Right.
because that's not putting any
I think
effort
so.
into saying thank you.
I know. And look, we've digitized it, so it's not hard to get a little kind of crazy with it, right?
Right.
It's not like you're going to go, if you've got a big church, 500,000 members, you don't have to create this 1,000 times. You can create it once, but
Mhm.
I would throw it around with the key staff
Yeah.
and like get creative on some ideas of some of the stuff you want to put in that moment. Because if there's one thing they're going to read that end of year statement from you because they're going to get that number, certainly for US, givers, and they're going to apply that for their tax deduction.
Exactly.
So
I think
it is a great opportunity.
yeah, and I think it's so end of year tax statement, you're going to get it. So I think it's personal note from the pastor.
Yeah.
I think it's saying thank you, and then I think it's
Celebrate a win, right?
celebrate for the whole year. I think you go
Yep.
back
That's
over
what I
the
mean.
past year. Here's all the things the church did, and
List them.
almost how can you consolidate what might take you,
Yep.
pages and pages to write, but how can you summarize
Yep.
what the church did, like in the community, in
Yep.
missions around the world, in
Yep.
new people being saved, and
Right.
growth in a program, and
Yep.
hiring new staff, whatever it is, like pack
All of
it
the
all in
above.
there, say thank
Mhm.
you, and tell the church, man, because of your giving, here's the 10 things that we were able to do. And
Yep.
then maybe there's a little bit of, and here's some of the plans for next year, right?
So let me give you a little bit of gold here. People give to things that are successful. I know it, again, kind of out of mission and obedience, we should just give, right? Because what the Bible teaches us to be generous. But I know people are affected in their giving because they're giving to something that's actually moving the ball forward. It's preaching a vision. It's hitting those goals.
Yeah.
You want to just in nature, like you just want to get on with a win. And someone who's like doing it, you go, man, I gave X amount last year. I'm going to double down. I'm going to keep
Right.
giving to this church. And there's nothing like seeing what was achieved to inspire you to get and get with the program again
Right.
for the following year.
Yeah. I think there's just something about, right, like seeing the success, like because ultimately it's like all good things come through God, right? Like, so it's giving credit where credit is due and being part of that journey. And if that's happening in your church, you want to keep going. You want to keep being a part of that. So being good at telling that story. Oftentimes churches are doing amazing work. They're not great at communicating what's happening, right?
Communicate,
And how God is moving.
communicate.
Yeah. So end of year tax statements. And then I think the last one touch on quickly is maybe new year sort of vision casting, right? So where's the church headed? What's going on this year? So
What's next?
Late January or early February, when churches are kind of like, here's the plan for the year, or here's where we're headed, saying thank you then too, right? Because
100%.
it's just another moment from stage and in all these channels that people should take advantage of.
So can we talk about next week real quick before we sign off?
Let's do it. So that's 9 ways to say thanks. We're going to summarize them, put them in the show notes. If you guys are digging the show, give it a like, please share it out. I think Thanksgiving, saying thank you for all the Facebook audience that's on right now is super important. So help us share the love.
So next week may or may not be the most exciting show we've ever done for me.
Because what is next week?
Next week is all about year-end giving.
Year-end giving. All right.
And so that's what I have in my notes anyway. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, but here's the thing. I am convinced that churches do not take advantage of December like all other charitable organizations do. We
Right.
we think two things. We think, oh, it's Christmas, it's holidays, people are traveling. I'm going to get my Christmas services done.
Yep.
They're going to be packed. This is not the time to
It's a lot, right? I
money.
mean, there's a lot going on from a production standpoint for churches
It's a
in
big
December.
month.
Yeah.
It's a big month, right? And you're focused on Christmas services, and for a lot of churches, that is the big attendance. But here's what I've discovered: a lot of churches they go like this. You know, I got a lot of visitors. I don't want to offend anybody. I'm not going to talk about money. Pause that thought for a second. Next week, we're going to talk to you about why the opposite is true.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're like a 2, 3, 4 time a year attendee, but that's your church, and this is where I go, and this is where I choose to spend my Christmas with my family.
Right. Right.
I'm not essentially going to be offended if you talk about. Now we're going to talk how to frame it, how to do it so it doesn't offend a total visitor from out of town who's not got really anything to do with the life of your church. But year-end giving, there is there's a reason. Frank, you can pull the probably stat from your mind, but non-faith-based charities bring in, what is it, like a massive chunk.
Yeah, like I don't know the number just off the top of my head, but in December, like something ridiculous, like 40% of all charitable giving in the U.S. happens in December,
right?
And of that, the last week and even the last day of the year, because of
huge
taxes,
yeah,
is massive. And so churches that don't at least know that,
yeah,
right?
So we'll grab all those stats and have them for next week's show. But the thing is that you have to get focused on year-end giving as a church, and I'm telling you, if you do what we tell you next week, your giving is going to explode in December. And so I'm excited. I'm just excited to talk about that next week.
It's going to be good. So tune in.
Yep.
We appreciate you guys tuning in here today. Again, give the show a like, share it out on Facebook, help us spread the love, and the recording will be up on YouTube soon.
Good times. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your turkey if you're here in America. God bless you guys. We'll see you soon.
See you, Tyler fam.